Thanks for tuning in to the Marvel Movie Minute.
Want to skip those pesky ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a weekly podcast which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 5 minutes at a time. If you ever heard we do it 1 minute at a time, that is fake news. 5 minutes only. In this, our 8th season, our best season, our Ramalanga Ding Dong season, we are looking at the very height of MCU cinema, overlooked by the Oscars somehow, Thor: The Dark World. I'm Pete Wright.
And I am also Matthew Fox.
There we go.
That's a lie.
Today, we're talking about minutes 71 through 75, which begins with a skiff-bound exploration of brotherly trust and ends with a wasteland-bound betrayal of brotherly trust. Friends, these 5 minutes could take place in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, outstanding, keeping it civic-minded. Matthew, you come to these 5 minutes. We offer a bridge 5 minutes. Very, very much a bridge 5 minutes between what happened before, which we were not thrilled with overall, and to what happens after, where everything gets dark and sepia. And I feel like there are things to talk about, but I first need to know if you have an airing of grievances ahead of us.
I was too bored. So rather than talk about these 5 minutes, because they're pretty dull, why don't we talk about the education of cinephiles like myself? What exactly do we mean by a bridge 5 minutes?
Well, this is, this is that place in the script where we have to put the pieces from our kind of middle stage, the kind of act 2 of figuring out what is going on with all of these individual characters, to coming to terms with motivations, emotions, rage, etc., and bridging us into the third act, or the climax of the film, where our hero is going to confront the great nemesis, the great villain, and we're going to see the twists and turns that take us into this final execution of his hero's journey. And that means we get to see Loki and Thor, in this movie in particular, kind of come to terms with who they are in relation to each other. This is a bit of, for the purposes of our podcast, a little bit of a cliffhanger. We're not quite sure exactly what their relationship is to each other, but that's what these 5 to 10 minutes are going to do for us.
Okay, so it's kind of like the conversation around the campfire before the heist or the big battle or something like that. It's the emotional revelations that are going to carry us into the rest of it.
Right, because we've seen our inciting incidents. We've seen the death of Frigga, the death of Mother. We're all reckoning with massive change that comes out of the emotional middle. And now we get to have some more fun again.
Okay. So it helps during these times if there's something emotionally resonant during those bridge minutes.
Sure.
Cool.
It does help. Cool.
Well, and here we get an example of when there isn't anything emotionally resonant. So that's kind of an interesting, it's a lesson through substitution, you know? It's like, what if we strip that campfire scene to the bare minimum, have people say things that have no meaning whatsoever and don't really connect in any way, and see if it works? And the answer is, it really, really doesn't.
Well, that presumes you have no interest at all in brotherly affection or attempts at brotherly affection. And you have no feeling at all toward the liberation of Erik Selvig, who has been, relegated to a police station, to an asylum. He's bounced all over the place. We get to have his sanity back for the first time in these minutes. So assuming you have no interest in any of that, I absolutely agree with you. These are a boring set of 5 minutes.
Well, to me, there's two different things going on here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to frame this in positive ways. We're learning things.
We're learning. Yeah.
I just didn't buy any of the Thor Loki stuff, which I think is also going to lead to our theoretical cliffhanger, which is there's no cliff whatsoever. We're 6 inches off the ground. Of course, Loki doesn't mean this as a real betrayal. Of course, this is all staged. I have a lot of thoughts about how badly that's handled, but let's get to what I think is actually to me, what could have been a real brilliant moment, because we have two things happening at almost the same time. We have Loki and Thor having this conversation about how they feel about each other, where the unspoken subtext is that all the litany of things that Loki has done that are terrible, that have caused Thor not to trust him and to see him in a poor light. At the same time, as you said, we have Erik coming back into sanity, coming back into himself, coming back into a realization of, like, it's not that he's like completely quote unquote sane, it's that the world around him is just as crazy as he thinks it is. And it's kind of like even the paranoid has enemies, and look, his enemies are right there. And we get the far and away the best line in the 5 minutes, probably one of the top 3 or 4 lines in the whole movie, which is where he says, "There's nothing more reassuring than realizing the world is crazier than you are." And that's a great line. That's incredibly relatable. I love that line.
Yes.
And he also says, that what he's going through is having a god in his head. And I don't know if the writer and director of this movie either haven't watched the first movie or got hit on the head at some point after they saw that first movie, because I don't know if they realize that the god who was in Erik's head is Loki. Because you're pairing these two moments together, and Erik is the living example of the collateral damage of what Loki did.
Right.
Lots of people in New York died, but we're never going to look at that. We're not looking at any bodies. We're not looking at the damage that was done. But here we have a living example of a man whose life was destroyed. And to interplay that with this question of should Loki be should Loki be trusted or not, with the director seeming to have no realization that these two storylines are in any way interconnected, that's not just like bad writing. That's like offensively, like, what are you? I think he was hit on the head. I think this was written by someone with amnesia who had forgotten about the first movie, because it doesn't make any sense. How do you name that he had a god in his head, and then that same god is asking for forgiveness, and there's just no connection between those stories whatsoever?
Right. This is what I've named these 5 minutes, the thrills and chills of parallel storytelling, because you're absolutely right. We have in the same 5 minutes this exploration of Erik's mental illness, right? And
Right.
on the alternate cuts, we have an exploration of minimizing Loki's entire arch villain role to that of a brotherly squabble, right?
Yeah.
And that's not just from the first movie, that's from Avengers, right? That's from the very opening minutes of the Avengers, right? When Loki first comes through the portal and has his way with the scepter. And Erik has been compromised for a very long time.
Right.
I think that minimizing that to the Thor Loki storyline was ultimately a mistake, but I can see how they got there. I can see how, when looking at the arc of just this movie, it can feel like it is earned emotional stakes. And I don't agree with it, but I do understand it. I understand how we need to accelerate the rehabilitation of their relationship by putting them in some shenanigans. And that's what we get executing here.
I think all of that makes sense. What I'm trying to add is the one other caveat and the one other, I think, problem, which is that as part of that acceleration, they are asking us to forget,
Yes.
or they are literally forgetting that that these aren't parallel stories. That what we are watching is a discussion of someone's wrongs and the literal damage caused by that person's wrongs at the same time. I genuinely don't know if the writer realized that, or the director realized that, or if they just decided not to care and expected us in the audience not to think about that. But it makes me angry because it's such bad writing. And it's like, I know having a connected universe is fine, but he literally says, I had a god in my head. How do you not, like, because you're right, I get that, but only if, like, what happened to Erik has to have no connection to what happened to Loki, or else having these as parallel instead of somewhat not interconnecting in terms of like they're actually dealing with each other, but like some acknowledgement of like, the pain that is caused being a part of that.
Would it have absolved these 5 minutes? Would it have absolved the story for you if Erik had not said that line?
I wouldn't have felt quite so insulted. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
maybe why it bothers me so much, is because I feel like the writer is like insulting me and assuming I don't have the basic brain power to make that connection. But I think even then, because you're right, like I think would have been much more powerful is for Thor to say something like, you know, I look at the damage you caused. I look at the people you hurt, the friends of mine who are still hurting. I'm not sure I can forgive you, but maybe I can trust you. Like some kind of line like that that talks about that there is a difference between forgiving past wrongs versus trusting an alliance going forward. Some kind of acknowledgement of that, because you're right, it really does feel like we're giving Loki this ridiculous redemption arc that he hasn't earned in order to build us up to, oh no, oh my gosh, Loki betrayed him again. Sorry, I really don't get so feeling of this, but these minutes are just so, it's the epitome of everything that is bad and annoying about Hollywood writing that so often the MCU is good about avoiding, but is just like.
Yeah. I think part of what I find infuriating about it is because the way Selvig performs, or Skarsgård performs that line
Mhm.
is a throwaway, right?
Right.
It's a toss-off line for humor, but it also implies that they know exactly from whence the god in his head came about, right?
Right.
It's not like they don't know where that story started. The act that the pure act that they put that line in the script and had him say it is a sign that they know exactly what's going on, and they used it as a laugh line. And I feel like that does a disservice
Yeah.
to better movies. And the same point, they handled the Loki Thor, I think, with they attempted to have that conversation have more weight to it, right? More
Mhm.
gravitas. That does not live up to Thor gravitas in the first movie. Uh, but it's an attempt to keep their conversation somber
Right.
and very gray. Um, but it also, I think that I think you're exactly right. I don't need to belabor this. I think the idea that they minimize that again to a brotherly squabble doesn't
Mhm.
live up to even the parallel story at all.
So at one point, Loki says, "Trust my rage."
Yes.
Can you point to a moment in what we've seen already that shows him expressing rage at anyone except himself?
Okay. Okay. No. Yes. No. Right. I mean, okay. So if I were to try this, it would be back in the, probably what, 20, 25 minutes ago
Uh-huh.
in the jail, the subterranean Asgardian jail, when Loki first finds out about Mother and uses his rage energy to throw some furniture around. I think that's the anchor we are meant to hang on to when he says, "Trust my rage." Now, part of the challenge with that is it's a little bit empty. I don't
Mhm.
necessarily believe that is the whole truth as we have seen it in the movie, but it is also a long established characterization of Loki in the comics, from Journey into Mystery and Thor, those runs from the 60s and 70s. Loki's anger at Odin and Thor were often one of his most consistent traits, his consistent motivators. So, I mean, that feels very much like we're going to use this line and we're going to encapsulate the identity of Loki and prove that we know our history, right?
Right.
Prove that we know from whence he comes.
See, I just don't buy that, because first of all, the scene you talked about, I would have said that's as much sadness or depression or just, grief as it is rage. As you talked about, yes, he has an awful lot of rage, but like to me, part of the whole point of Thor and Loki is that Thor is rage. Rage to me is I am seeing red. Think of the Robert Frost poem, like, does the world die in anger, in fire, or in ice?
Mhm.
Rage is fire. That's not Loki in the MCU. Loki is cold, icy, determination. Like, yes, malevolence and malice, but it's plotting, it's planning, it's coming up with all these things. It is absolutely not rage. And even if I buy what you're saying, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, I believe you, but I feel like expecting a character beat to make sense because of things that 80% of your audience hasn't read is, again, horrific writing.
Mhm.
But even if you take that as given, his rage, as you said, is at Odin and Thor. Who is he raging at right now? I assume what we mean is that he's raging at Malekith, but we have no connection to that. We haven't been given any indication of, is it rage at himself because he helped that happen? Is it rage at Odin and Thor, and thus for keeping him locked up because he maybe could have stopped it?
Or is it
there's
just
nothing
rage? I
there.
mean, really, like, is it just rage that Frigga is dead? And we have already talked about the closeness of his relationship to his mother. I mean, can't we take that as carriage, that in fact that might be enough? Trust my rage that mom is dead and I'm here to rectify that or to seek vengeance for that.
No, because you haven't given us that. You've given us sadness. You've given us grief. I maybe I'm being cruel or like not giving them enough credit, but I feel like there's nothing that these writers have done to in any way earn that. There has not been any rage. There has been grief. There has been, and giving us the possibility of that rage being self-directed, or that, well, here's maybe my better question is, right now there are 3 possible targets for Loki's imagined rage. 1 is at Malekith and the Dark Elves.
Right.
2 is at Thor and Odin for keeping him locked up where he couldn't stop it,
For
or
sure.
couldn't be with his mother in her last moments. And 3rd is at himself, because we know that he helps them. Why would Thor possibly what reason would he have to trust that the rage that Loki is feeling, that no one has seen, it's not in the room with us, it's imaginary, is going to be at Malekith, and that it's trustworthy? It's the dumbest line in the world. There's no reason for Thor to trust that, because A, it doesn't exist, and B, there's no reason to think it's going to be directed one particular direction.
That is a real issue, that Thor has not seen any evidence of Loki's rage at all, right?
Right.
Even if we take my read on that earlier sequence, him throwing furniture around as rageful and not sad or grieving, no one else knows he's mad. He's done nothing but be snarky
Right.
since the escape. Like, there's no real character anchor for that.
Well, and remember what it was that Loki showed Thor finally when he let his walls down.
Yep.
That wasn't
That
rage.
was grief.
That was grief. It was brokenness. It was, and it could be self-rage. It could be the result of rage, but there was just nothing there. And so, so the building up makes no sense, which let's get to the betrayal. Did you for a moment think there was any possibility that this betrayal was real?
No. No. And I don't know. I really wonder if that's their intention. I'm hopeful that it was a nod and a wink. Loki's always scheming. We know, we all know. The only one who should not know is Malekith, and won't that be a fun trick? I hope that it wasn't supposed to be played with anything other than a wink and a nod. And these are experiences that we get with these kinds of twists and turnabouts that, I feel like I'm going to give more grace that they know the game that they're playing when it comes to this sort of betrayal, because we've known Loki long enough to know that Loki has both the abilities and the intellect and the wherewithal to trick us. And I mean, he's on the tin. He's the trickster god, right? This is what he's known to do.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. And he does have a great line of, "I am Loki of Jotunheim, and I bring you a gift. In exchange, all I ask is a good seat from which to watch Asgard burn."
Yeah. Right. I, you know, part of this, as we have said many times, Matthew, is I like Tom Hiddleston and I like the way he delivers some of these lines. And I find his screen charisma enough to buy credibility
Yeah.
toward, some of the weaker parts of the movie. I feel like where you and I differ here hinges entirely on the rage versus grief and sadness bit. And I respect that. I totally see it. I just feel like I am choosing I'm choosing optimism. That seems
I,
so foolish. Uh,
I
but I'm
feel
choosing
like
that direction.
you are like to me, the writer has given you and me as much reason to trust him, trust them. I forget who
Mhm.
actually wrote it because I don't remember their name because it should be blackened from Hollywood forever.
Ouch.
Bring back the
Ouch.
blacklist for this writer.
Ouch.
But
Okay.
I'm kidding. Obviously,
Right.
McCarthyism is coming back in this real world. It's terrible. But
Yeah.
how we have less reason to trust this writer that they're doing anything competent than Thor has to trust Loki. Like, I'm not giving this person any grace. He forgot that the god in Eric's head is in this scene. Like, how, to
Well,
me,
no, now
if you
right.
can be
I
that
think that's fair.
incompetent as a writer at your craft, how can I trust anything you're doing?
Well, I think
And
the other side of that, though, is it's possible that the team writing this movie underestimated the importance of the God in the head bit and just minimized it. And I feel like now I'm going to be fishing for an alternative that I don't agree with. But there really is rationale to say, look, this is a thing we all know. We're going to play it as a laugh line just because for the architecture of the film to get us into the next film, we've just got to move along. And we're going to clean slate. And this is something Marvel does, right? This is something absolutely they do. Sometimes they clean the slate. They wipe their hands of stuff, they dust themselves off, and they pretend that history did not happen the way it did. Retroactive continuity is a superpower of certain teams at
Mhm.
Marvel. And this is one of those examples where they just need us to move right the hell along.
So let me put it this way. A friend comes to you and says, "Hey, Pete, I started dating this new person. And they tell me all the time that they don't respect me. They're just using me for my body. And I don't really even find that part fun.
Mhm.
And they have made it very clear that I'm just a palate cleanser to help them get over their ex and to help them feel better with themselves to get ready for their next relationship. And they have
Where is
told
this
him
going?
all the things that make you realize this person's in a bad relation for them. But they say, but I have optimism that maybe there's some good in this relationship. You just
Ah,
described all the reasons why there's no grace to give these writers, why there
yeah.
is no grace to give these writers, and then yet you're trying to convince me there's a reason to give them grace.
Oh, I recognize I'm not going to convince you of anything, but I do want to let you know that I'm fully trauma bonded to this movie at this point.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think you're in an abusive relationship with this. You are acknowledging that this movie is insulting you, that the movie
Yes.
doesn't care.
And I
about
say,
the-
yes, sir, may I please have another?
Oh my God. And I'm probably pissing off 9/4 of the audience. 9/4. I'm bad at math. And I apologize to people who like this movie more than I did. I promise, let me back into the Marvel minute. I will not be offended so generally. It's just this one movie. I feel like I can hear the writers laughing at the people who go to watch this movie thinking, what schmucks.
Yeah.
That we can give them a movie that we were so lazy about the writing of, so careless about the writing of, and they're still going to give us money.
Let us transition because we
I
have
did have a lot of
we have
sugar immediately before this
Yeah.
podcast, so perhaps that's what's going on here.
we have a third body of participation in these 5 minutes, and that is Darcy. Of course, we've talked about Erik and that great line that you've already called out, but he's with Darcy and Ian, and they are getting him released from the authorities. The police officer number 1, played by Justin Edwards, who has a robust catalog of credits. This was a delightful little cameo. But Justin Edwards is a fantastic BBC comedian, comic actor, and has done wonderful stuff. So Your thoughts on Darcy's? Darcy seems like a glass of water to a man in the desert. Does that hold up here?
It tries. It gives a good college try. The problem is that we're pouring sand on it of Ian, because
Ian's a drip for you here.
I'm trying so hard not to think in these terms, but like, the idea that you need to claim to be someone's family to bail them out of jail is already kind of suspect. But then that you could claim that with no identification whatsoever, just I'm Mr. Selvig's son.
Yeah.
Just
and
fuck
you give
right? I'm
police
sorry, I'm just so
officer-
angry about the other things.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's a dumb joke that steps on Darcy. Darcy is the star of this moment. Let Darcy be Darcy. Get Ian out. Has Ian ever added anything to this movie that if it wasn't more lines from Darcy, the movie wouldn't have been better?
I will give you that. Absolutely. I agree with that. I feel like Ian is just a sequel ingredient, and we didn't need it. It was funny once that my intern has an intern. That's the only time it was funny. No disrespect to Ian, because making movies is hard. Getting a part in this movie is fantastic.
Yeah, sure. No disrespect to the actor.
Right. Good on you. The part should not have had the kind of legs that it was given, because Darcy is the better character in almost every situation. We do get some clumsy equipment handling from Ian, but I do sometimes wonder, even if you want to leave Ian in here, what if there's a universe where Ian never speaks and just Darcy is the mouthpiece of Ian, who's just clumsily carrying equipment around all the time?
Let Darcy
funny.
Objectify him. She's hilarious when she does that.
Hilarious.
Or we were given two new male characters towards the beginning of this movie as kind of sort of flirt. I'm not going to even call it a love interest, but like a flirt partner for Darcy and Jane. What about we take that guy that Jane had a date with, who was the actor we've seen in a bunch of things? What if he's tagging along with them because he's still worried about Jane, even though the two of them are trying to drop him all the time? That could have made it much better,
Lest we forget the Patagonian toothfish.
Yeah, the Patagonian toothfish, the Chilean sea bass. There you go.
There's jokes. There's jokes in there.
But yeah, no, Darcy is great. Her line about, I'm not getting paid enough for this. I'm not getting paid at all. Brilliant. Darcy's great. And Darcy being there for Erik is a nice moment. And it kind of shows that they do still have some real compassion for each other. They've been through things together. But again, it's I don't know what these minutes are. I don't know what they're doing there. We haven't given them enough to care. Like Thor and Loki, we are manipulating towards the end battle.
Right.
I don't know. Selvig obviously has some idea about the convergence that presumably is, it's kind of like Chekhov's convergence knowledge. Like it's going to become relevant at some point. And so we've had to go kind of on the side quest to like help him out. But again, I don't, it's a funny moment. Like if I see this as a GIF, of Darcy riffing for 20 seconds on it, I'm going to click like. I'm going to enjoy that GIF. But I don't think it adds anything to this part of the movie.
Well, it does, again, let's go back to bridge minutes, right? It goes back to they want to put Erik Selvig in some position for the third act of this movie.
Right.
That's all we're getting. And we know that Erik Selvig is being held by the authorities. All we need is to get him out of jail, right? We just need to see him walking out of the facility. And it gives us what I think is actually a pretty cool visual effect of the murmuration of the birds. And they, our trio walks out of the station. They see the murmuration of the birds in the sky. The birds disappear into callback to the earlier visual effects into one of the portals in the sky, and they come up right out from under our trio. All these birds going crazy. Yes.
Professor Wright, can you define what does murmification mean?
Murmuration. That is it's like the the schooling of fish underwater, but birds do it. Right? They
cool. Okay.
follow each other around and they create these shapes in giant flocks in the sky.
Got it. Okay. I didn't know if it was a cinematic term or a bird term or what.
No,
but
it's a bird
cool.
term.
We've learned something today, folks. This is why we tune in.
That's right.
So
I
what is
like that effect. I like the idea that the birds come up, so shockingly out of the bottom of the frame. I find that an energetic way to get us out, to just dump us out of our time with Darcy and Selvig and Ian. Like, get us move along.
Why
and they do that.
What do the birds signify, or what do they mean?
I don't think the birds themselves signify anything. I think all this is entirely an excuse to show us that they are seeing a portal in the middle of West London.
Okay, so they are connected to the fact that this convergence is happening.
Yes.
They're reminding us that because the convergence craziness is happening.
That's my read on it, yeah.
I like it.
Okay.
And I think it's a fun scene. But there's that one pesky little detail. I feel like the writer forgot that birds, especially these birds, which look an awful lot like ravens to me, they're black birds, and granted, there's other black birds, but these look an awful lot like ravens to me, are deeply significant to Odin, one of our main characters. And there isn't supposed to be a connection, but that's they're not Chekhov's birds that are never going to fire. Like, why make it something directly connected to Odin? Did you just forget again? Like, it just...
What does he say, though? Like, he calls it out, what the birds are. Selvig says, it's happening sooner than I calculated. Wait, what's happening? Birds? Birds are happening? Darcy. Ian says, starlings. It's called a murmuration. My dad used to take me birding as a kid. And that's when the birds, the starlings, now fly into the portal.
Okay.
So
yeah, there was just, something like that would have been like, no, these are not ravens. And I'm sure bird watchers could watch it and be like, who's this redheaded idiot who thinks they're ravens? But to me, black birds in a movie with a god of ravens,
very far away.
Ravens.
Right. Like, we're not looking. I don't know that ravens fly in a flock like that. I don't know birds. But what I do know is that it's a good effect that kicks us out of these 3 minutes or out of this minute to get us into the action and back to, I think, Svartalfheim again. Is that where the landscape, this barren landscape, is that we're stuck on, where they meet Malekith?
I'm going to guess that it's the Dark World, solely because the movie is called The Dark World.
Yep.
But really, it should be called, as you said, the Sepia World, because it's not really that dark.
Yeah. When I think about this movie and when I express trepidation about taking this on, my mental image of the movie was locked in this space. I find it so unappealing. I say this not cinematically, but from a production design perspective, so boring. It is so visually monotonous. It defaults to this just bleak, rocky wasteland. It's just desaturation and grays and browns. And I get that it conveys alien barrenness, but it totally collapses into visual sameness. I don't understand why any showdown would happen here. It wastes a precious opportunity for world building too, right? Like, if you go back to, we've talked a lot about the Norse mythology and Marvel comics, like the realm is kind of ripe with character, right? I don't know any other way to say. This just felt like the cheapest choice made to design a stage for a showdown.
Especially because right now at our house, we have kind of smart bulbs, and we can, adjust the warmth of them to move them more kind of like blue or more kind of orange. And this is at the orange setting. And I feel like if you took the light bulbs that are lighting up this world and shifted them into the blue setting, congratulations, you're back in Jorgenheim, the ice planet from the first movie. Because it looks, it's barren, it's broken, it's just blue tinted instead of orange tinted.
It's a quarry with terrible weather. That's all it is. And it misses a great opportunity to make the dark elves space feel distinct and I don't know, is it too broad to say culturally meaningful? This is not culturally meaningful. I also think it undercuts the tension of the scene, just sort of, you know, performatively. The dialogue between Thor and Loki is, I don't know, this whole dialogue of mistrust and duplicity is maybe more rich if we're in a different environment that was more rich, right?
Right.
Like the tableau kind of makes the scene, and I think we lose this. You compare anything with the vibrance of the rainbow bridge sequences in the first Thor, you know, we get some serious performance out of those locations.
Especially
So
because
this is just cheap.
there is one piece of set design that actually has some color and some vibrancy to it. And it's played by Natalie Portman. And I say set design because Jane in this scene is 100% set design.
Prop. Yeah.
She makes a face every now and then, but she's not given any lines while all this is happening around her. Including, you know, she was deeply involved in like Loki's first, you know, attempt at all these terrible shenanigans. She was hurt too. Eric's her friend. Like, couldn't she has, I think, had some, I know she's been here this whole time, but like she at least had some understanding of what Eric was going through. Like she could have been the one to help make the connection of, you know, Loki and Thor are talking about this, and she's the one to say, wait a minute, Loki, you hurt people. You hurt my friend, like Dr. Eric. You know, there's so much she could have done, but instead, her presence, I would forget that she's there because she does nothing in the scene.
Right. Right. So I think this is an example of the missed opportunity. For me, the missed opportunity of the film. It is making any sort of proscenium production on this landscape and turning Portman into a prop and all of that. It's just dark. It's just dark and so boring. And that's the part that hurts, because Thor is, if anything, Thor is the god of vibrance. Thor is the god of hue. And I think this just sucks it out of it for no apparent purpose. Had they leaned in on this place as a place of mystery and craft and shadow, and give us the tunnels and atmosphere that we, you know, could have gotten from the comic, maybe that creates something that has character and charisma. This has none of that. It does not mean anything.
It's not really fair to look at a cinematographic technique that took place 10 years after this movie is made and to wish it back into it. But it proves it exists. Think of in another Thor movie, quite literally, the most recent one, Love and Thunder, but also in the second Dune movie. In both of those movies, there are realms that are meant to exist as like fundamentally different, where light is, they are dark worlds where everything is shot in black and white. And there's a reason for it in the world. In Dune, it's because of like a moon that gives off different kinds of light. In Thor, Love and Thunder, it's because it's kind of in this like, you know, shadow reverse world kind of a thing. But you get this incredibly striking effect. You could have done that for a dark world. You could have done that for because the thing is that, you know, whenever you have a group that's an outsider, you always have to ask, what are they outside of? And like Jorgenheim, the Frost Giants are outside of Asgard, but they're within the 9 realms. You know, they're within the larger product. And we keep being told these dark elves, no, they're further back. You got to take the camera wider and wider and wider and wider lens to get to just how outside of everything they are. So their world should feel alien and different. And it doesn't have to be that black and white technique, but that's an example of how to make something that is just fundamentally like anything that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, instead they give me, you know, the Badlands of Montana on a cloudy day.
That's pretty much it, right? That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Now, what is to come, you know, we'll have to judge that a little bit separately. But I remember this sequence coloring, for lack of a better word, my entire impression, my entire sense memory of this movie. And so I get to this sequence and I am brought low. Even after I am singing attempted praise
Mhm.
of the earlier minutes in this sequence. This one leaves me feeling barren.
Got it.
So here we go. We're going to wrap up this 5 minutes. We're going to wrap up the
Actually, I'm going to say one last thing
sure.
to highlight some of the great research you've done, but also help me with my case of writer malpractice in the movie, which is to find out actually that the director made the movie a little bit better than the writer had tried to do this. Because you pointed out that in the original script, there's actually supposed to be a lot more exposition before Loki makes his betrayal.
Yes.
And I didn't know it was possible to make these minutes worse until I read that. And I was like, oh, that would have been even worse. So, because it is a nice, the betrayal is not unexpected in terms of like the overall plot, but it's a little bit too set up with the like, well, you shouldn't have trusted me, but still it's pretty quick. It happens fast. It's bam, 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 and you get caught up in it. And if he'd given some speech about, well, it's good you trusted me because now oh my God, it would have just been interminable. So there's another moment where the writer tried to piss on us and the director at least stood in front of us for just a moment and said, you've hurt those audience members enough. I'm not going to let you punch them one more time.
All right. And with that, we will leave it to minutes 76 through 80. Oh my goodness, we're just cranking these out. Cranking them out. It's very exciting. At some point, we'll be at the end. And it's starting to feel like that day can't come soon enough, right?
Yeah.
I
promise I'm going to find more things to like. And I promise I like so many more of the MCU movies. This one just, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got more coming. That is next week. On behalf of the Fantastic Ethical Panda, that's Matthew Fox themselves, I'm Pete Wright. And we will see you right back here climbing up those minutes all the way to the end.
Same bat time, same bat channel.